Hello friends, this is lesson number 54 in the series of criticism and theories in English literature. In this video, we shall have a discussion on Michel Foucault. If you remember, in the previous videos of this series, we discussed Gerard Genette and Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes, especially this name is very important, and he is the practitioner of first of structuralism and then of post-structuralism. And now with Michel Foucault we have the same. He is also the practitioner of post-structuralism. The important thing related to the structuralist and post-structuralist thinker is that the structuralist thinker, first they were practicing structuralism and later they turned towards post-structuralism. And the timeline of structuralism is 1940s and 50s, and for post-structuralism it is 1960s and 70s. And one more term comes there, that is of deconstruction. Okay, we shall have a proper lesson on structuralism and post-structuralism and also on deconstruction. But for now, we shall begin our discussion on Michel Foucault. The spellings and the pronunciation is quite different. So remember, Michel Foucault, and he is related to post-structuralism. He was born in the year 1926 and died 1984, and he was a French philosopher. His father was a surgeon, a doctor, and he himself indulged into homosexuality. And later he went to a psychiatrist and he had observation of the prisons. So remember this term, prisons, because he had a lot to say about prisons and crime and punishment as well. Anyway, we begin our discussion about the concepts given by him. The first important concept given by him, that is of madness and civilization. What is this? Actually, this is also the title of the work written by him, Madness and Civilization, published in the year 1961. We can also have a close observation about this concept in our society. Have you seen people being mad and their treatment in the hospitals? And even if they are not treated in the hospitals, how they are treated in the society? When you see a mad person, can you really feel what is going in his mind? Can he really feel about himself that yes, he is mad? Or does he think that the other people, they are different from him? What Michel Foucault is saying, that the people, such mad people are treated in very inhuman way. They are brutally treated in the society. Sometimes they are even put into the jails or prisons. They are kept in isolation. So that sort of treatment he is simply criticizing. So what Michel Foucault is saying, that treating the mad people in this way, it is very bad. And we have the two concepts. First is of the madness and other is of the civilization. So both are somewhat opposite. Civilized people, they behave normally in every situation, and mad people, we cannot really predict their behavior. How can they behave in any particular situation? And then he takes a few examples from the medieval society where the mad people, they were roaming freely in the society and they were even treated as wise people. In some of the stories or plays or even in the movies, you might have seen such people. They are somewhat mad, but at the same time they are so much wiser than the other people. Their wisdom can be seen when they give advice to the people or even to the protagonist. So Michel Foucault is saying that mad people, as the society thinks, they are not so mad and they must not be treated in this way. Their treatment in the medieval society was way better. So as a conclusion to this concept of madness and civilization, we can say Michel Foucault is advocating that mad people should be allowed to roam freely in the society. And he is criticizing the modern ways of civilizing them, especially their treatment in the hospitals and prisons. The next work by him, that is of Birth of the Clinic. And in this work he criticized the modern ways of the treatment of the patients. He simply criticized the medicines and the treatment method that doctors adopt these days. They simply treat the people like objects, not as human. They hardly have any feeling for such ill or unhealthy people. So in this work he is simply going against the commercialism of the medical line, where we see the doctors are going after money and they are giving lots of medicines to the people so that they could earn more profit, and even they don't have any sympathy towards their patients. Rather they treat them like the mean of earning money. So he is criticizing all these modern ways. So in both these works, Madness and Civilization, and also in Birth of Clinic, he is rejecting the modern theories or modern practice of treating the mad or ill people. After this we have another work by him, that is Discipline and Punish. The subtitle to this work is Birth of Prison. So one thing you should remember, that all these works were first written in French and they have their original title in French language, and then they were translated into English. So the English title of this work is Discipline and Punish, Birth of Prison. Now from the title you can easily guess that what sort of material we shall get in this work. He is criticizing the ways of giving punishment and also establishing discipline among the people. First he takes how the punishment method evolves by the time, the evolution of the punishment, and then he discussed the things related to prisons. I told you in the beginning that he had close observations of the lives in the prisons. He discusses different ways of giving punishment to the people from the medieval period of 15th, 16th, 17th and 18th century, how by the time the punishment methods got changed. Firstly, it was that the people got executed or given punishment in the open, and later they were brought into the prisons. So there come the concept of the prisons. The central idea behind all this concept is of the dominance of the power, how the power uses the punishment to make the people get in discipline, so-called discipline. Commonly we can see this thing in our society, that there is a law, there is a proper rule and regulation, and all these rule and regulation, so-called rule and regulation, they keep us in discipline. And Foucault is saying that this is how the power operates. The power or the authority, they can operate only in this way, to keep the people in so-called discipline. We all live in that sort of a disciplined life, which is according to the rules given by the power or the authority. And if we violate these rules, then there is a provision of punishment. And if we do not break these rules, we are called as disciplined people. And if we break these rules, as there are people who get themselves into crime, theft or any such a thing, they are called as indisciplined people. And for them there is proper provision of punishment. He says that the people were given punishment in the open spaces in the olden times. Why? Because through that punishment given in the open spaces, the other people will also get a lesson from that, and other people will remain in discipline, so-called discipline. Punishment is there to reform them, to bring a change in them. Even we apply this method as well in the classrooms. If teacher is there and if student is making any mistake, the teacher is giving him punishment. Why? Because he thinks that by giving punishment he can correct his behavior for the future. But does it work in this way? Some critics think that it does not work, and the other perception that the authority had in the past, that if they give punishment to the people in the open spaces, that will work as a lesson for the other people. But what Foucault thinks, that if you give punishment in the open spaces, then the other people will have sympathy for the victim who is getting the punishment. It go in the different way, and it creates hates in the mind of the people against the authority. Now, as a result of that, by the time the evolution of punishment takes the punishment to prisons, where now you see the punishment is given in the closed spaces, in the rooms, in the torture rooms. There are specially designed rooms for giving punishment. So in this work he talks about the discipline and punishment, how there is so-called discipline through punishment, and he analyzed this through the medieval period from 15th 16th century to modern age. And one more concept he gives in this work, that is of Panopticism. Panopticism. You should go to Google and search a word, Panopticon. Panopticon. What is this? Panopticon is a tower-like building. It is designed to observe the prisoners and their cells. If you have seen any movie, just try to think that there are number of prisons, means rooms, and all the rooms are quite visible from the top of a tower, and that tower is called as Panopticon. And sometimes you see there is a light that is focusing on the different cells one by one. So that really gives us a hint that someone is observing all these prisoners, and these prisoners, they also have this in their mind, that they are being observed or they are under the surveillance. Suppose you are in your room and you are just behaving normally, but if you have a CCTV camera there, then will you be able to behave normally? Perhaps not. So that sort of a discipline they want to bring in you through that panopticon or tower-like building. They are observing you. So when there is system, it is observing you, you cannot behave properly, or rather you will behave artificially. So that is so-called discipline. And Foucault says that that sort of a surveillance or observation is harming your body and mind. Earlier in the medieval society, or in the 15th 16th century, they were simply harming the body. They were giving some physical punishment. But now in the modern times, when they are giving the punishment through that sort of observation, they are giving injuries to the mind. They are hurting the minds of the people. He takes this concept to the broad level. He says everywhere in the society, the people are under the observation. In the schools, in the factories, hospitals, even in the militaries, everywhere there is a code of behavior, and the authorities are there to correct you. They are constantly observing you. That is somewhat like a so-called discipline. If you violate, if you break the rule, then there is provision of punishment. So that is a somewhat artificial behavior that we all are bearing. In the end, he says that the power is controlling everything, and it is the power that is bringing us all in so-called discipline, and they are trying to make us what we are not. Simple thing, that in the schools we are there with some strict rules and regulation, and the children, how they behave at home and how they behave in the school, that is entirely different. Why? Because we bring them in that sort of a so-called discipline. And Michel Foucault, he is simply against this, and he says that that sort of artificial discipline is no way worthy. Rather, it serves as an injury, as a punishment to the people. And this is done to the people on the name of so-called civilization. If someone is not behaving this way, someone is not behaving by the rules or regulations of the society or any particular institution, then we say that they are not civilized people. So he is criticizing that so-called discipline, so-called civilization. So now you see that in all these works, whatever we have discussed so far, he is criticizing the modern ways, whether they are treating the ill people or the mad people, whether they are bringing the people into so-called discipline. Now we move towards the next concept, that is history of sexuality. This is the work published in the year 1976. The concept of the history of sexuality, that is also quite radical given by him, and you will find that the traditional or the orthodox people, they will not accept this concept at all. He sees sexuality as repression. Means he says that in the society it is hardly accepted when it has no purpose, or in other words we say that sexuality is accepted in the society when it has a purpose of reproduction, and if someone is doing it without any that specific purpose, or when he is doing it to fulfill his sexual desires, this is not accepted in the society. Michel Foucault says that the society must be open for it, and it should let the people to enjoy it as an instinct. As we all have some natural instincts, someone have for playing the game, someone have for reading, the same way the sexual desire should be accepted in the society. And then he says that the sexuality of the children, of the women, and of the married couples, and even of the homosexuals, that is oppressed in the society. You know, we all people live in bourgeoisie society, where the society is trying to take control of everything. There are some social boundaries and barriers which one must follow. Like for sexuality, for example, one can do if he is married only, if he is in wedlock, otherwise not. One can do to his life partner only, and it is not accepted if someone does with other than his life partner. So Michel Foucault says that the society is creating these rules. This is also somewhat like a discipline for the people to have control over their sexual desires. And again, you can relate this concept to civilization. If you see any society where you see the people, they are open for sex, then you will term them as uncivilized people. One thing you should remember also, that we are taking, or rather Michel Foucault is taking European society, and he is recommending them that they must be open for it. Now think of the Indian societies. They were not open in the past for inter-religion or inter-caste marriages, but these days they are quite open, and the law is also recommending or supporting them. And even these days you see the court is also allowing the marriages of the homosexual people. But the society, our society, still has not accepted this idea. Or even the people like us, as educated people, we still not feel that such marriages of homosexual people should be allowed in the society. But Michel Foucault is saying that we must be open for it. We must be liberal in our opinion. Michel Foucault, he is quite influenced by a German philosopher, and the name is Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche once said that the concept of good or evil is changed by the time. It is not permanent that something is established as good or bad. One more thing he adds, that the human beings must be free from their false conscious beliefs of morality. So he's saying that whatever the concepts we have about morality, he's saying that these are false, and we have Michel Foucault, he is also advocating that one must be open-minded towards sex, as in any progressive society, these concepts gets changed by the time. So you see that he is quite liberal in his opinion, and he's advocating that one must be like this. One must accept these sexual activities or the concept of the sex with open mind, and must not be that strict as our traditional societies are. After this, we come to another concept given by him, that is of discourse analysis. What is discourse? Discourse can be like a discussion, a debate that we usually have in school, colleges, or in any other institution, in public places as well. So for any discourse, there are some social and institutional norms. There are certain rules and regulations by the society, what can be said and what cannot be said. And Michel Foucault is saying that nowadays we must adopt to the new ways of discourse, where the people should feel themselves free to speak whatever they want. And one example he takes from the previous concept, that is of history of sexuality. He says that a new discourse of sexuality has to be there. The idea of sexuality has to be discussed in the society, how they take this word. Even in our world, in our societies, we see that earlier the people were so uncomfortable with this word. But still we see that the society is developing, it is evolving in its thought process. They are now becoming more open towards these sensitive topics. They are thinking them to be so sensitive, but actually Foucault thinks that these topics are not so sensitive. So according to Michel Foucault, discourse is the way with which you can change the perspective of the common people towards something. As we were talking about sexuality, if you are a teacher or you are in any institution, how many times you talk about this concept with the children? Can we openly talk about this? No. According to Foucault, as the society evolves, definitely there will be a change and the people will start looking at these sort of concepts differently with open mind. Commonly we have in social obligation that what to say, what not to say, or even how to say about something. Most of the time you see that people skip some certain words, and even we people skip these words. Why? Because we have that fundamental social foundation. And having said that, over the years you might have noticed even in our society that the discourse of the people have changed, and now they are thinking about these things differently. Even in the school, colleges, the people are talking about these things related to sexuality or sex education. So this is the thing Michel Foucault is saying, that the society must be liberal or must be open-minded towards these concepts. And the power has a huge role to play in the construction of this new discourse. And only through these discussions, the society can change their concept towards anything. Moving on, the next concept is of power and knowledge. And in this concept, he says that both identities are not independent, or rather they are interdependent. Means power and knowledge, you cannot see them differently. Both are quite interlinked. He says knowledge exercises power, or power is the function of knowledge. Just try to concentrate on these two sentences. First he says knowledge exercises power. If you have knowledge, you can have power over the people. And the next sentence, power is the function of knowledge. Your knowledge can function as your power. To understand this concept even better, we can take examples from the institutions. In the schools, in the colleges, the teacher used to have or tend to have more knowledge than the student. So when they have more knowledge, they can tell the others or the students that what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. So what they are doing, not just they are telling them about something, but rather they are also establishing their authority over them. He takes one more example. In Christianity, there are priests and they used to have knowledge. And the people there are coming for confessing their crimes or sins. The priest, he uses his knowledge and tell the people what is wrong, what is bad, and then he exercises his knowledge as power over the people. And after that, Michel Foucault concludes that the power also builds knowledge. With the power, one is building his knowledge. If you have power, you are in the authority, definitely your knowledge will build and you will have more knowledge than the other people. So remember, the concept of power and knowledge is given by Michel Foucault, and where he advocated that both identities are not independent, rather they are interlinked. And then we move on to the last concept given by him, that is of history. Actually, he expressed his views about history, what we see history in the books. He says that in the academics we read history that has spoiled the taste of the real history. Means this is not the ideal way to get into the history, because it is simply telling us facts and figures from the history, what happened. But he says that the purpose of reading history is to build a better present and future. It tells us that where our ancestors went wrong, what they did wrong, and what we should not do in the future. So we should take lessons from the history. It is nothing academic, but it is more like a literature. It is a house of good ideas. Or in other way, we can say that history teaches you lessons not just about facts and figures, but about your present and future life, how you should live. So that is all we have for Michel Foucault. So we just quickly recite the main concepts that we discussed in this lesson, and then we shall have a quick discussion on the previous year questions. So first, Michel Foucault is a French philosopher and he is associated with post-structuralism, and the ideas given by him about madness and civilization, where he says that the treatment of the mad people is not accepted or should not be accepted how we do these days. Rather, these mad people should be allowed to roam freely in the society. So he is simply against the modern treatment of the mad people. Then there is another work of Birth of Clinic. There he also goes against the modern ways of the medicines and treating the people. He simply says that the people are objectified. They are treated like machines or the objects. The people or the doctor, they are treating the patients for earning money. They hardly have any sympathy for ill people. Then we have another concept of discipline and punish, and in that he talk about prisons, how in the prisons the people are brutally treated. The people are kept under a constant observation, and there he gave the concept of the Panopticism or Panopticon, a tower-like building from where the prisoners are kept under 24 hours surveillance. So if someone is under that sort of surveillance or close watch, he cannot really behave properly. There he criticized our other institutions like schools, colleges or hospitals, factories, wherever the peoples are forced to behave in a typical manner of discipline, so-called discipline. So he is simply against the traditional way of thinking, how we see discipline or madness or even the punishment. So he is against all these traditional ideas. After that, we discussed his work, that is History of Sexuality. In this work, he advocated that the society must accept sexuality as human instinct, a natural instinct, and he is against relating sexuality to morality. And further, he adds that any progressive society should be open for such sensitive topics. And then we had a brief discussion on Discourse Analysis, another work by him. And in that work, again, he is talking about how the opinion of the society, of the public, the common people is changed by the discourse. What is discourse? Discourse is something what is accepted in the society when the people are talking, what to say, what not to say. There may be words, there may be the concepts. As these days, the people are becoming more open towards these topics, these sensitive topics like sexuality. And it is happening just because of the discourse that is advancing in the progressive societies. Through this work, he again comes back to sexuality and says that the discourse in the society decides that how the society takes these sort of sensitive topics. And then we had a brief discussion about power and knowledge, where he said that power is the function of the knowledge and knowledge exercise power. He is saying that both these terms are interdependent. No way they are independent, they are interlinked. If you have power, you will have knowledge, and if you have knowledge, you are bound to have power over the people. After that, we discussed his views on history, study of the history, and he is saying that the academic has spoiled the ways of reading history. Actually, we people are not reading the history in right way. The best possible way to read history is to read it as a literature. Only then we can learn lessons from history, because reading history serves the basic purpose of making our present and future better. And it tells us that where our ancestors went wrong, what they did wrong, so that in the future we must not make those mistakes. So these were the all concepts that we discussed. Now we consider a few of the previous year questions. The first, the term Panopticism. This term is mentioned in which work of Michel Foucault's, and that is Discipline and Punish. Actually, it is the title of a chapter in Discipline and Punish. The next question. There is a quote, and it was asked that who said this? Power circulates in all directions, to and from all social levels at all time. It is said by Michel Foucault in Power and Knowledge. In the next question, we had to match the author with his work. So, Michel Foucault was correctly matched to History of Sexualities. There were other writers and there were other works, so I just tell you about these works. Judith Butler, she is correctly matched with Gender Trouble. Alan Sinfield, correctly matched with Cultural Politics, Queer Reading. And then Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, he is matched with Epistemology of the Closet. Okay, we shall discuss about these writers and their works in the upcoming lessons. But for now, just remember that Michel Foucault is correctly matched with the work History of Sexuality. In the next question, it was asked that Archaeology of Knowledge, by whom it is written? It is written by Michel Foucault. There were other options like the work of Grammatology. Grammatology is written by Jacques Derrida, about which we shall learn pretty soon in the next lesson. And Structural Anthropology is written by Claude Lévi-Strauss, about whom we have already discussed in the previous lessons. And the last option, Anatomy of Criticism, that is written by Northrop Frye. In the next question, it was asked that what is true, or actually what is not true about Michel Foucault's position on sexuality. So the four options were given there. The first, sexuality is literally written on the body. He never said this. So this is untrue, or this is false. The next option, power operates through discourse. Absolutely. With power, you can give discourse to the others, because according to the power, what people discuss, that is decided. And then power and knowledge are interlinked. That is also true. And the last option, where there is power, it is possible to find resistance. Definitely, when power operates, there are some certain people who will resist. So what was the wrong option? That is, sexuality is literally written on the body. So it was never said by Michel Foucault. In the next question, there were 4 options, so we have to choose which one is wrong. And the question was, sexuality points to discourses about. The options were medicines, criminology, psychology, anthropology. And the right options means what is wrong, that is anthropology. He never talked about this. He talked about medicines, psychology, and crimes and criminology. In the next question, again it was asked about Michel Foucault's stand on history of sexuality, that what is wrong among the given statement. The first option, modern sexuality is produced through as discourse. Definitely correct. That in modern society we think of sexuality in new way, in advanced way. How? Because the discourse is allowing us. When the people get advanced in their discourse about sexuality, definitely the perspective of the society will also change. The next option, prolific modern discourse of sexuality is more striking than suppression. Yes, this is also correct. In the modern society, the discourse on sexuality is more striking. Earlier it was suppressing, but now it is striking. Third option, to write historically about sexuality involves increasing direct, immediate knowledge or understanding of unchanging sexual essence. This is wrong. He never said that to write about sexuality historically you need direct immediate knowledge or understanding of the sexual essence. And the fourth option, modern sexuality is intimately entangled with historically distinctive context and structure now called as knowledge. Yes, this is correct. The modern concept of sexuality is distinctive from what we think about sexuality historically. This is distinctive. In the next question, it was asked that in which of his works archaeological study is found. In his earlier work, archaeological study is found, that is Birth of Clinic. What is archaeological study? That is about the ancient human life, and he studied that in Birth of Clinic. That study is performed on the fossils or the materials, the remains of the ancient people, and that study he did in the Birth of Clinic. The next question, what is discourse according to Michel Foucault? And the right answer is, it is a conceptual framework which enables some people of thought and deny or severely constrains certain others. So discourse is something that what to say or what not to say. It frames the speeches of the people to some extent, in which way they should speak, which is allowed by the society, and which way or the other way they must not speak. So discourse is a conceptual framework which enables the people to think about something and also to deny or constrain the others that they must not think that wise. And the last question, a new historical reading above everything else is influenced by. The answer is Michel Foucault. He is the person who talks about reading history in a new way, not with the facts and figure, but to learn lessons from the history. There were other options like Jacques Derrida, Jacques Lacan, Theodore Adorno, but the right answer is Michel Foucault. So these were the all questions that we had about Michel Foucault in the previous year papers. You must be wondering about the difficulty of the questions. Definitely these questions were quite tough and their options were also quite hard to interpret. But this is UGC net, we cannot have simple flat line questions, so there are hard statements, so sometimes they become even more difficult to interpret. That's it for this lesson. Hope you must have enjoyed these lessons. Just try to go through this lesson once or twice and try to remember the important concepts related to history, sexuality, birth of clinic, then madness and civilization, history and discourse. So thanks a lot for watching this lesson and have a great day.